dual revolutions of the French Revolution and Industrial Revolution created a new modern world. Some people were disturbed by the lack of stability and the reign of terror which occurred in the political revolutions, and by the economic inequality and horrible conditions of the new industrialized world. They wanted to turn back the clock and slow the pace of change. In politics and culture areas, these groups were known as conservatives and romantics, respectively. Today we examine the reactionary ideologies in the modern period. When the French Revolution erupted in 1789, the world was shocked, and then even more dismayed when Louis XVI was beheaded and a republic was created. Though it failed and Napoleon became Emperor of France, the French armies of Napoleon spread the ideas of equality, liberty, and revolution around Europe. The conservatives were individuals who acted against the French Revolution and Napoleon. They wanted to restore the old order, which meant they wanted a return to monarchy and the power of the nobles. They reintroduced the old ideals of religion, order, tradition, obedience, and stability. They disliked the recent innovations of the French Revolution, such as civil liberties, constitutions, and representative government. Key thinkers like Edmund Burke argued against sudden revolutions and called for slow, evolutionary change. The French theorist Joseph de Maistre defended absolute monarchy in the Catholic Church. With the chaos of the revolutions, conservatives proved popular, and it was the dominant ideology after the defeat of Napoleon. The leaders of the alliance that defeated Napoleon agreed to meet for a congress at Vienna to plan the future of Europe. The major players were the host country of Austria, led by its chief diplomat, Prince Clemens von Metternich, the most prominent conservative of the time. Russia was represented by Tsar Alexander, the leader of the military coalition which overthrew Napoleon. England and Prussia rounded out the Big Four. France had a very able minister in Charles Talleyrand, who managed to get a lenient peace settlement for the defeated French nation. In all, 6 sovereigns, numerous princes, 700 statesmen, and 1,000 guests attended the Congress. The leaders of the Congress were conservatives and wanted a return to absolute monarch, so their first action was to restore the legitimate monarchies overthrown by the French. In France, they placed Louis XVIII on the throne, and they brought back the monarchs in Spain and Italian states as well. They also wanted a balance of power, that is, no state should be so powerful as to wreak havoc on the rest of Europe. In short, not one power should dominate Europe. More specifically, the other powers wanted to protect against French aggression, and they did this by strengthening the borders. In the north, the Netherlands was increased in size, and a growing Prussia bordered directly next to France. And in the south, Austria controlled the Italian states. Also, Switzerland was reorganized as an independent country. I'm not sure how you make a country neutral, but from then on, Switzerland was a big roadblock to block advancing armies. In other decisions, a German confederation was formed, replacing the old Holy Roman Empire, which would later lead to the creation of modern Germany. Poland was made a kingdom, but controlled by the Russian Tsar, leaving the Polish people not too happy about that. The great powers also agreed to hold regular meetings and to fight against revolution and keep the peace, which is known as the concert system. In 1818, they removed the armies from France and let them join their alliance. In the early 1820s, revolutions erupted against the rulers of Spain and the Italian states. During their meetings, they authorized intervention to prop up the monarchs. In retrospect, the Congress was successful in preventing another Napoleon. There were no major wars for the next 100 years, that is, until the First World War in 1914. The monarchs realized their most dangerous enemy was not each other but the people. Thus, they band together for the next century. Though conservatives were happy with the Congress, many other people were not. The proceedings were led by the leaders of the great powers. There was no representation from the lower class or even the middle class. In addition, certain nationalities like the Polish or the Italians or Belgians were upset that their territories were handed over to other countries. In domestic policies, the conservatives strengthened their power, sometimes through force. In the early 1800s, England was under the control of the Tories or conservatives. The Corn Laws in 1815 raised tariffs on imported food, which raised the prices of food. That was good for aristocratic landowners, but bad for the poor. In 1819, there was a protest of 60,000 people in Manchester against these policies, but the cavalry was called in and 11 people were killed. In the aftermath, there was a crackdown on radical politics. In France, under Louis XVIII and then Charles X, there was a return to the policies of the old regime with a strong monarchy, or aristocracy, and church. Metternich made the German Confederation a bastion of conservatism. They used the powers of the state to suppress those who advocated for political change. In particular, the Carlsbad decrees targeted the educational system. Political student fraternities were eliminated, spies were sent to watch students and professors, and the press was censored. You have to watch out for those dangerous professors. In Russia, after the death of Alexander I in 1825, a group of liberal military officers called the Decembrists pushed for a more liberal monarchy. The new Tsar Nicholas I crushed the rebellion and turned to a more powerful and conservative state to prevent further rebellions, including a strong secret police and surveillance system. In all these states, policies were not popular with many facets of society, and we'll turn to them in the next video, but for now, conservatives were firmly in power. Like conservatism, Romanticism was a reaction against the liberalism of the French Revolution and the French Enlightenment. The 18th century was dominated by the Enlightenment, and the movement was centered in Paris, though elements appeared throughout the Western world. In the 19th century, intellectuals, especially in the English and German-speaking world, shifted to Romanticism. The Enlightenment emphasized reason, but the Romantics focused on emotions. The Enlightenment focused on the classical period. Romantics idealized the medieval period. The Enlightenment philosophers favored universal laws found in physics. The Romantics preferred biology and nature. The Enlightenment thinkers were secularists. Romantics enjoyed religion. So, what were the main characteristics of Romanticism? Well, it doesn't mean to be all lovey-dovey and like long walks on the beach. No, Romanticism's most significant aspect is reliance on emotions. Romantics base their actions on sentiments and feelings, and one of the most well-known examples of romantic literature is Goethe's Sorrows of Young Werther. It tells the story of a young man who falls in love, but the woman is engaged. He does the only emotional thing imaginable and commits suicide. Some sources say that thousands of young men committed suicide after reading the story, a claim not verified by modern historians. They also stress uniqueness. You could say that the Romantics were the first hippies or hipsters, wearing long hair, beards, messy clothes. They were rebelling against the norms of society, especially found in the middle class, and attempting to be different for the time period. Lastly, they believed in the cult of artistic genius, where you might find worship of a political leader or sports figure. Today, the Romantics elevated creative individuals. Musicians and poets were commonly surrounded by devoted followers. The greatest manifestation of the Romantic period was poetry. It covered themes like nature, beauty, emotions, humanity, folk tales, and it critiqued the modern industrial society. If you like poetry, you're probably more in tune with Romanticism than the Enlightenment movement. There are many great poets, especially those who wrote in English, including the British Wordsworth and Coleridge and Blake, Shelley, Keats, and Lord Byron, and the Americans Whitman, Poe, and Emerson. It's a classic list of great poets in the 19th century. There is also a revival of history. Historians were famous and history books were bestsellers. That period definitely sounds pretty great to me. With reference to history, the medieval period saw a big revival. The Enlightenment favored the Greeks and the Romans, but the Romantics loved the emotions, the religion, and the naturalism of the medieval period. Translated into many neo-Gothic buildings and medieval-inspired artwork. There's also a growth in historical literature. Some examples are the old oral tales, famously collected by the Grimm brothers during this time, or the dark horror of Gothic literature found in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, for example. Romantic painters covered many of the subject matters discussed already: nature, medieval themes, anti-industrialism, emotions, and love. I particularly like this painting, The Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog, by the German romantic Caspar David Friedrich. Have you ever climbed a hill or a mountain and then taken back by the wonder of the view? This is the content of this painting. Friedrich is showing the insignificance of man in face of the mountain range or nature in general. Beyond that, the man is clearly reflective. pointing to the fact that meditation in nature is a powerful tool to grow and learn. We tend to group much of older music together as merely classical, but to be more specific, 19th century music is considered romantic, whereas classical music invokes a lightness and a beauty romantic. Music can be dark, emotional, and visceral. Most consider Mozart kind of a transitional figure between classical and romantic, and see Beethoven as firmly in the romantic movement and one of its geniuses. With his emotional and moving pieces, he's also a great example of that mad creative genius worshipped by the Romantics. Other Germans like Schubert, Schumann, and Wagner dominated the 19th century. Religion also benefited from Romanticism. In many countries, the old regime was revived, and the Catholic Church was restored to an elevated position. Moreover, people began to favor medievalism, tradition, and order, all which coincided with Catholicism. There was a more profound Protestant revival. Methodists grew in England and Pietism grew in Germany. Both formed the root of evangelicalism. People were not fulfilled by the signs of the Enlightenment, and they turned to religion for meaning. And this particular religion was characterized by fire and brimstone homilies, intense conversion experiences, and visible and highly emotional responses of shaking and yelling. This was the age that saw the rise of the Great Tent revivals. So, there is a mixed legacy of the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution. Some people liked the freedom and progress of these periods, but others did not like the disorder and rapid change. The latter turned to conservative politics and Romanticism. In the next video, we'll explore those who wanted more change.